Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with our introductory remarks. Hello, my name is Jill Jones. I'm the Managing Director of Research at NEFE, and I'm going to spend some time introducing the researchers who will be presenting their research today, and then turning it over to Lauren Lisi, who is our Manager of Grants and Research Projects, and she'll provide some additional housekeeping and introductory remarks. So the researchers presenting today are Dr. Melissa Wilmarth. She's an associate professor in the Department of Consumer Sciences and an assistant dean for student affairs at the College of Human Environmental Sciences at University of Alabama. Her research interests focus on the area of family and consumer economics. She investigates economic well-being of families and economic hardships with particular attention to stress and relationship outcomes. Some of her current work investigates financial wellness and relationship satisfaction, finances and couple experiences of stress and satisfaction, and financial knowledge and household finance. Dr. KT Kim is an associate professor and graduate program coordinator in the Department of Consumer Sciences at University of Alabama, where he teaches in the CFP board, registered undergraduate and master's programs. He is currently also the director of Family Financial Planning and Counseling graduate program. He enjoys doing applied research related to household finances, investment decisions, and financial planning. So before I kick it over to Lauren, I just wanted to announce our grant cycle is currently open. It just opened on September 15th and will close on November 15th. So we are offering one grant cycle per year currently, and some of the areas of focus for our grant cycle include an emphasis on measurement. And this research project is a great example of the focus on measurement and some of the work that we've been funding along those lines, in addition to internal research that we're doing related to measurement. So this is really about reevaluating the current metrics that exist about literacy, financial behavior, knowledge, education, so that way we can measure those more effectively and sensitively for diverse populations. Systemic inequality. So this is the investigation of knowledge, skill, and wealth disparities, especially among populations that are statistically more likely to experience systemic barriers to improving their financial well-being. The third research focus is around data and methodological limitations, so understanding and examining biases in order to help the field identify knowledge gaps and to strengthen research data, including voices that are traditionally less heard. And then finally, a focus on youth, and youth can really be defined as emerging adults and sort of youth in a maybe more traditional sense. So examining inconsistencies and exposure to financial education among U.S. youth in the U.S., as well as various instances of financial socialization and impacts of family units. So those are some of our core research focus areas, though it's not that any research concept that we fund addresses all of those. Those are just some of the example research focus areas. So with that, I will turn it over to Lauren to move us forward.
Hi, everybody. I just want to talk about a couple logistics with this webinar. So we are going to turn it over to our presenters shortly, and they'll present for about 45 minutes. We will leave some time at the end for Q&A, and you'll notice that all of you are muted right now, but during that time, if you do have a question, once we open it up for Q&A, you can use the raise hand function at the bottom of the bar in your screen, and we'll be able to see the order in which hands are raised. And when that happens, going down the list, I will unmute you so that you are able to ask your question and talk with the presenters. And we'll just go down the list of the order that they're received. And if we don't get to your question, I will open up the chat function at that time as well, so that you can put your question in the chat, and we can follow up with you and answer your questions after the webinar. We will also be putting a survey in the chat, just a post survey to ask about your thoughts about this webinar, any comments that you want to give to us for future webinars. We'll put that in the chat about 5 minutes before the webinar ends. It's just 3 short questions, and it would be great if you could complete that while we're all together today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and KT.
Great. Thanks, Lauren and Jill. We are so thankful to be here and spending our time sharing some of this project. We are so fortunate to have it be a funded project from these grant calls from NEFE. KT and I are here today. Our collaborator, Taeyang Pak, is unable to be here today, and we gave him a pass since it's about 2 a.m. his time in Korea. So we told him we'd handle it for him and not expect him to be here with us. We appreciate your time here today and really want to highlight the project we've been able to work on because of the support from NEFE to look at how we measure financial knowledge. We know there's many ways to measure financial knowledge, but the real question comes down to, are we doing it correctly? So take some time to think about in your practice, your research, whatever your role is, how do you measure financial knowledge or how do you include it in your research? Because likely we'll be talking about some things that hit maybe how you handle that. As many of us know, you're here probably because you have an interest in financial knowledge. It's central to our daily lives, especially for every stage in the life course that we have. Yet many consumers don't have a solid grasp on financial topics, and they struggle to have the knowledge they need to make informed personal finance decisions, but also help them to avoid costly mistakes. And unfortunately, relatively little is known about the validity of our measures in financial knowledge. Our current financial knowledge tests may tap distinct constructs, including not only knowledge, but also the propensity to guess, leading it to possibly lack construct validity. So we really proposed this project and have worked through it, thinking through how can we improve our survey protocols to be able to better assess our financial knowledge, financial education programming, and set it up so that we can better serve clients and target audiences with programs. Many of you may know this question that's on the screen ahead of you. It's one of the Lusardi and Mitchell Big 3 and Big 5 questions. You're likely familiar with it. When you're presented with a question, respondents are given a few answer choices, and where our focus is not the question itself, but this little square here that says an answer choice of don't know. And so we're really focusing our conversation and our concern around the don't know or the prefer not to say response options that we often include. So in many of our practices right now and how we measure financial knowledge, if a respondent is given 5 questions like this, and this is their answer sheet, and they give substantive responses on questions 1, 2, and 4, but we see only questions 1 and 4 are correct. Right now, the way we score this is they get 1 point for question 1, 1 point for question 4. They don't get a score for the incorrect answer, but this respondent, this sample respondent, also gave a don't know selection for question 3 and question 5. And when we're scoring this, they get a score of 0. So this respondent gets a total score of 2 out of 5 if we're scoring it what's a pretty common and traditional way to score these items. And it's assuming that both the incorrect and the don't know response options are indicating an absence of knowledge. So the current approach to measuring financial knowledge that we often work through is possibly distorting our understanding of the level of financial knowledge or our level of financial illiteracy, but also its effects on financial behaviors. What we know from educational testing literature and political literacy literature is that the inclusion of the don't know and prefer not to say response options opens the door and introduces systematic error that's associated with the propensity to guess, but also it could end up reflecting the respondents' personality traits in their selection of answers. So it could reflect things like self-confidence, competitiveness, and risk aversion. So our project is really to look at and demonstrate the threats and consequences associated with including the don't know and prefer not to say response options in financial knowledge surveys. Specifically, we wanted to examine how this reduced validity influences empirical modeling of the knowledge effect, and then explore the scale modification impacts for assessing financial knowledge and financial illiteracy and hypothesis testing. Our work is framed through the Mondak and Davis conceptual framework, which outlines 4 behavioral stages of knowledge. And the first stage that we'll look at is fully informed. This is where a respondent can look at a question and identify the correct answer and select that. Those are what many of us in a classroom would be, that's the student you want, right? The one who knows it and can select the right answer. But we know that's not always who we have. So we have respondents who may be partially informed. So this is someone who's using partial understanding of a concept to rule out some of the incorrect options and then make a choice. The third stage, not that these are in an order necessarily, is misinformed. And these are going to be respondents that make a confident judgment and they're choosing an option and they're confident on it, but they're wrong. Their knowledge is wrong on this area. And then the third area, or the fourth of the behavioral stages, is the uninformed respondent. And this is someone who has no knowledge of the question, but is making a selection in the choice. So if we assume that financial knowledge questions only measure knowledge, then it would imply that the uninformed are selecting the don't know option, the misinformed will answer incorrectly, and the fully informed response will be correct. Some partially informed respondents will answer correctly, others will answer incorrectly, and the likelihood of the correct answer increases with a function of a level of partial information. So as that partial information increases, the likelihood of the correct answer increases. This conceptual framework, as it applies to the effective financial knowledge, we need to think about differently. The differences between those who are fully and partially informed and those who are misinformed, but also the differences between those who are fully and partially informed versus the uninformed. Past research in this area has not modeled this to take into account these different concepts or the constructs. And we might be misattributing effects because of how we model this. The inclusion of a don't know response option will increase reliability within knowledge scores, but also if respondents are choosing a don't know option instead of offering a random guess, it can introduce a random error as a consequence of blind guessing and actually reduce reliability. We also then see that we can sacrifice scale reliability for increased validity. So we're back to this long-standing trade-off between reliability and validity when we're trying to prioritize how to design a survey. So the project that we're going to talk about today is in 2 parts, and this was kind of our overall project that we worked through. Part 1 is looking at secondary data analysis, where we're looking at potential correlations between the big 5 personality traits, not the Lusardi and Mitchell big 5. So the big 5 personality traits and the propensity to choose a don't know response option on a financial knowledge question. And we'll look at the changes and correlations between financial knowledge scores and behavioral outcomes, depending on how we include the don't know option within scale construction. The second part will shift to primary data collection, which we did as part of this project, and the preliminary analyses on that. And we'll examine how reduced validity influences empirical modeling and the knowledge effect, and look at changes between the financial knowledge score as well as financial well-being, depending on how we include the don't know response option. So for now, I'm going to pass this off to KT.
Thank you, Dr. Wilmer. I'm going to cover part 1 from secondary data analysis. For our empirical analysis, we used 2 US national data sets. Specifically, health and retirement study was used for the first study. to estimate the potential correlations between big 5 personality traits and the propensity to choose don't know options. Final sample included respondents who participated in the 2014 and 16 HRS survey and 2 specific modules listed here. And the final sample size was 946. For the second study, we used 4 different waves of National Financial Capability Study dataset released by FINRA Investor Education Foundation. This NFCS dataset has been widely used in modeling and testing the associations between financial knowledge and various financial behaviors. Our analytic sample included 96,649 individual level observations across 4 different waves from 2009 to 2018. For the first study, we used big 5 personality traits as a focal independent variable. This is kind of short history of this variable in the HRS data. HRS dataset collects big 5 personality traits, firstly in 2006, and it has been administered to a rotating random sample like 50% of the core respondents since 2006. And big 5 traits include neuroticism, extraversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. And each personality trait is composed of 4 to 7 subdomains, and responses to each subdomains were combined for the summary score of personality traits. For the second study, we used 2 financial behaviors and 1 risk tolerance as our dependent variables, and we estimated its associations with knowledge and don't know responses. 2 financial behaviors are binary indicators of number 1, retirement preparedness, number 2, emergency fund savings. Also, we used risk tolerance measured by a scale of 1 to 10. A higher score representing a greater willingness to take risks. We selected financial behaviors following the evidence that financial knowledge is one significant determinant of retirement preparedness and emergency fund saving in the existing literature. Another key set of variable of our study is financial knowledge questions. Both HRS and NFCS dataset include big 3 financial knowledge questions covering the topics of compounding interest, inflation, and risk management. HRS survey collects 1 additional question about life annuity. By contrast, the NFCS dataset includes 2 additional questions about bond and mortgage questions. So these 5 questions in the NFCS dataset have been used as big 5 financial knowledge question by many researchers. The summation score of objective financial knowledge is constructed by the count of correct responses. So this kind of traditional approach of grouping correct versus incorrect response in a single group has been widely used in previous researchers. Additionally, we defined a binary indicator of whether the respondent gave don't know to any financial knowledge questions. Also, we looked at the count of don't know responses. For example, there are 4 knowledge questions in the HRS and 5 big 5 in the NFCS, which means that the count of don't know responses can be ranged from 0 to 4 for HRS and 0 to 5 for NFCS dataset. These don't know variables may capture the propensity to provide don't know response in 2 different ways. For study 1, we conducted regressions to estimate the associations between big 5 personality traits and the propensity to provide don't know response. We created 3 dependent variables. First, binary variables of don't know responses to individual knowledge questions. So 4 binary variables in each financial knowledge questions. And the second dependent variable was any don't know response among 4 knowledge questions. And the final dependent variable is the count of donor responses, ranges from 0 to 4. This is the summary result from the regression for study 1. We found that openness to experience is negatively associated with a propensity to give donor response to each knowledge question, as well as any donor response and number of donor responses consistently. Second finding was that agreeableness is positively associated with the likelihood to give donor response to risk question and to give any donor response among 4 knowledge questions. And neuroticism is positively associated with giving any donor response, but it was found to be significant at a marginal level, which means p-value is less than 0.1 but greater than 0.05. For the second study, we conducted a few different empirical models. As I explained earlier, we used 3 dependent variables, 2 financial behaviors, and 1 risk tolerance. For each outcome variable, we constructed 3 different empirical models. Specifically, the first model does not control for donor response. And the second model includes the binary variable of any donor response. And the final third model controls for the count of donor responses. And in each empirical model, we also controlled for various household characteristics listed the right side covariates. This is the regression results of the first 2 financial behaviors, retirement planning and emergency fund savings. First, we found positive associations between objective knowledge and 2 financial outcome variables. This is consistent with previous literatures. But the association, the positive association was attenuated significantly when we control for a binary indicator of any donor response. You can compare the coefficient between model 1 and 2, first and second column. We also found negative association between giving any donor response and financial outcome variables. This indicates that respondents who gave donor response are less likely to be engaged in retirement planning and emergency fund savings. If you look at the third columns, we found similar findings when we controls for the count of donor responses. More specifically, as donor response increases, the likelihood of engaging in retirement planning and emergency fund savings decreases. And again, the positive association between objective knowledge and financial behaviors are also attenuated when we control for the number of donor responses in the model 3. And the third dependent variable was risk tolerance, and we found a bit mixed results on the association between financial knowledge and risk tolerance. In the first model, financial knowledge was associated positively with the level of risk tolerance. However, if you look at the model 2, the significant relationship between knowledge and risk tolerance disappears when we control for any donor response. But we found negative association between any donor response and the level of risk tolerance in model 2. And in model 3, we found similar results. The donor response is associated negatively with the risk tolerance. However, the association between knowledge and risk tolerance was opposite, which is negative effect. So more research are needed from this. So this is kind of summary of part 1 from secondary data analysis. So from study 1, we found a significant association between personality traits and the propensity to give donor response. More specifically, openness was negatively, but agreeableness was positively associated with the likelihood to choose donor option. So this result from study 1 show that donor response induces underlying personality take part in the measurement of financial knowledge. From study 2, we found the positive association between financial knowledge and financial outcomes, but the association became attenuated significantly when we control for the don't-know response. And also we found negative association between don't-know response and financial outcomes. That's pretty much your part one.
So thank you, KT. We're going to continue to trade off a little bit through, but now we're going to switch to what we've identified as part 2 in this project, which is the primary data collection and the analysis, really trying to get at the different effects of the don't know option being presented. And we had 4 research questions that we worked through related to this portion of the project. The first being, does the inclusion of a don't know and a refuse to answer response option impact responses on financial knowledge questions? The second research question then looks at if an inclusion of a preface discouraging the don't know or prefer not to say response options impact the responses to the financial knowledge questions. Research question 3 is to investigate if the inclusion of a financial incentive for correct answers impact responses on financial knowledge questions. And then finally, research question 4, does the knowledge effect associated with financial well-being change depending on how the don't know and refuse to answer are included within the measurement of financial knowledge? So to do this, we collected data in May and June of 2021 using the Qualtrics panels with Qualtrics Research Services. We limited our sample to participants residing in the US and between the ages of 25 to 65 years old. Not that we don't want to learn about young adults. We were worried that they might have a little bit of a different perspective. So we had that bottom age range of 25 for inclusion. Our survey had a total of 55 to 62 questions, depending on which version was randomly assigned to each respondent. But each survey did include questions on background financial information, really looking at financial behaviors, savings, retirement estimation, those types of things. A whole host of financial knowledge questions included, and then sociodemographic questions. We ended up with a sample of 3,593 participants. To give a little bit of an idea of what the sample looks like, we had 64% were female, just over half were married, and just over half had children. The graphic in the center gives a little bit of a picture of the distribution of household income. Our largest category among these were 23% of participants had a household income of $100,000 or more. 55% of the sample were employed full-time or self-employed. In terms of education, the largest category was a bachelor's degree at 25.73%, but also 24.59% of our sample had less than a high school or a GED educational level. On average, our age was 44 years old. I believe it was 43.9 years, and 57.975 or 97% of the sample owned their own home. Just to kind of give you an idea, this slide includes some information on some of those financial background variables that I mentioned. So 55% had estimated the amount they need retirement, and 53% did not have investments beyond their retirement accounts. 55.2% had 3 months worth of emergency savings. Just under 80% had not used alternative financial services within the last 12 months. 84.74% had not taken a hardship withdrawal from their retirement account in the last 12 months. We also included single item measures of subjective financial knowledge and risk tolerance. And those averages were both 4.79. So for the subjective financial knowledge, it was a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being very low, 10 being very high. On the risk tolerance, it was also a 10-item scale. 1 equals very low risk, 10 equals very high risk. So we're centering there about the middle. We had 3 treatment conditions that were employed with the data collection. The first being whether or not the don't know and prefer not to say or refuse to answer responses were present. Whether the don't know and prefer not to say were discouraged in a preface. And number 3, whether the don't know and prefer not to say responses are discouraged through an incentive for higher scores. For our specific discussion today, we have a 3 kind of sets of variables of interest that we included in the analyses. I'm going to jump to the bottom right with sociodemographic variables. Much of what was included on those sample description, that first sample description slide, were included, including age, gender, education, race, ethnicity, marital status, employment status, household income, homeownership, and dependent children. We also included a financial well-being measure, which was the 10-item CFPB financial well-being scale, which will be used for the empirical check on the inclusion of the don't know options. And of interest today are financial knowledge questions that we created to test this out. So I mentioned there was a whole host of financial knowledge questions that were included in our survey. We did include things like the Big 5, some of the investment scales that are out there, but we also included 14 items that we wanted to review to hit 5 content areas that maybe are underrepresented in financial knowledge surveys right now. And so we had questions in the areas of debt and credit, insurance, budgeting, taxes, and estate planning. And we had 14 items total. We did kind of a long form version with 14 and a short form version with 7 items. So that difference is what either you had 55 questions on your survey or 62. In the interest of time, we don't have time to go through all of these questions. They are presented in this massive table for you. But we did try and hit those 5 content areas that I mentioned, really trying to move away from the mathematical idea of what people are being tested on, but really conceptual and applied. Do they know what this is? We are happy to share questions with anyone after the presentation because we just don't have time to go through all of these today. We're already worried about going long the way it is. So trying to keep that in check. Combined the short form and the long form with our treatment conditions, we end up with a set of 4 treatment groups. So among these 4 categories, groups A, C, E, and G were the short form. Groups B, D, F, and H were the long form. But the first set of groups, when they received the financial knowledge questions, they received the preface of, here are some multiple choice questions. Many people don't know the answer to these questions. Now, their financial knowledge questions only included the substantive response answers. The next 2 groups received the same preface. However, they received not only the substantive response choices, but also the don't know and prefer not to say options. In our third set, the preface reads, here are some multiple choice questions. Many people don't know the answer to these questions, but even if you are not sure, please select your best guess for each question. And they received substantive response choices as well as the don't know and prefer not to say. And our final set, the preface reads, here are some multiple choice questions. Many people don't know the answer to these questions. You will receive a higher compensation for higher scores. So even if you are not sure, please select your best guess for each question. And they received, again, the substantive answer choices as well as the don't know and prefer not to say options. And now I'll hand it back over to Dr. Kim.
Thank you, Dr. Wilmot. I'm going to show you summary results for financial knowledge score by different groups. And as Dr. Wilmot explained very well, we are interested in 3 treatment effects. Treatment effect of 3 conditions. The first treatment condition is the inclusion of don't know option. To test this treatment effect, we will compare group A and C and B and D, long-term, short form and long form of knowledge questions. The second treatment condition is the inclusion of the preface to discourage choosing donor response. And to test this treatment effect, we will compare group C and E and D and F, respectively. And the final treatment condition is the inclusion of financial incentive for correct answers. To test this treatment effect, we will compare group E and G and F and H. So for empirical analysis, okay, this is kind of ongoing research from our primary survey. But we conducted multiple pairwise comparisons between 8 groups using 2 sample t-tests and various ratio tests. The first comparison were conducted to examine the treatment effect of don't know option in the survey. And we found that the don't know option is presented like group C and D. The mean score of financial knowledge question were lower with higher standard deviations. These results indicate that financial knowledge could be overestimated when don't know option is not presented in the survey. The second comparisons were conducted to examine the treatment effect of the inclusion of preface to discourage donor response. For this analysis, we found no significant difference of financial knowledge score between group C and E and D and F, which means that treatment effect was not significant from our findings. And the final group comparisons were conducted to examine the treatment effect of financial incentives for correct answers. And again, we found no significant differences of financial knowledge scores between group E and G and F and H if we included financial incentives as a treatment condition. In addition to multiple pairwise comparisons, we also conducted linear regression of financial well-being on financial knowledge. First, we found positive associations between financial knowledge and financial well-being, which is consistent with existing literature. And this positive association pattern was consistent even after we control for don't know options in 2 different ways. Any don't know options, and second, the number of don't know responses. However, the correlation between don't know response and financial well-being was a bit mixed and not consistent across different models. So this is a summary of our results from part 2 using our primary survey. Financial knowledge score could be underestimated when don't know is presented. And giving don't know response reduces validity of the scale, but may increase the reliability of the scale. And we found supportive empirical results. A preface to encourage substantive responses, like discourage choosing don't know option, does not help prevent respondents from choosing don't know option in our data. And additional financial incentive for each correct answer response did not have any significant impact on the financial knowledge scores when we compare the groups. We have some discussion points from our studies and analysis. And first, our study identifies some potential threats to validity associated with the donor responses in financial knowledge surveys. Again, we found supportive evidence that the donor response and incorrect responses are different foundationally. The second point is that researchers should consider survey protocol to improve the ability to better target financial education efforts, but also assess them better. It is because the donor response may capture both being uninformed and under personality characteristics from our findings. And extended from the current study, follow-up studies are needed to understand the role of donor response options when we measure financial knowledge and how to improve the survey protocol in financial knowledge studies. There are a few key takeaways. And again, our major finding was that the inclusion of donor response may reduce validity of the scale, but increase the reliability of the scale. And the reduced validity may impact the evaluation of financial education intervention. As Dr. Wilmoth mentioned in the introduction earlier, the treatment of donor option is well developed in educational testing and political literacy. So from the current study, we hope that researchers will consider how to design financial knowledge survey incorporating some critical measurement issues. In this study, we raised the issue how to treat donor responses in the knowledge questions. Our last implication is that researchers may include questions that are central to the financial education program and intervention. Measures of financial knowledge tend to perform better when specific and specialized to content areas such like investment and credit. I think this is, yeah.
I think we're ready for questions I think Lauren and Jill, we're gonna moderate that.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, we looked at one question in the chat, but if you want to raise your hand, I will unmute you in the order that I received those raised hands, so you can ask your question directly. But it looks like we have a question in the chat. Can you guys see that, Madeline?
Does time spent on survey differ between groups? Are participants spending more time thinking? You know, that's a really good question, Madeline. So Madeline's asking, are they spending more time thinking and potentially searching for the right answer under any of the experimental conditions? And we haven't looked at that. Yeah. So that's a really good thought to think about. I know we glanced at completion times when we were checking for data quality, but I don't think we looked at it that way. So we're making a note of that because that really could be an impact. We were surprised that there wasn't an impact when it came to financial incentive in responses, but I don't know if it changed the time they spent.
Looks like there's another question in the chat asking about gender differences.
Yeah. Hey, Barbara, this is like our favorite question to get when we've done some presentations with this. That is actually our next step. We think it'll be a great investigation based on gender because we hypothesize there will be a difference, but we don't know yet if there is. But that's going to be our next step that wasn't initially planned to be kind of a separate extension, but we think it will lead to hopefully another manuscript submission that's separate.
We put on this topic in one of our research pipeline as a gender differences in the propensity to give donor response to knowledge question. Thank you for the comment.
Any other questions? There was another question that came in during the presentation about a racial breakdown of the sample. It came up.
You know, that is inadvertent on our part, and it wasn't intentional, and I can't tell you with confidence what it is. It is more white than anything else, but it is more diverse than sometimes we see, but I can get back to you on what it is.
And then we have a question from Susan Meredith. She's going to unmute herself to ask the question.
Sorry, I just typed it in. I was just saying, I missed, I may have missed it, but what was the knowledge? Did they start with an education, a foundation of some education that then affected the knowledge they had? Did you have, what were they learning?
Yeah, so we didn't do any programming
Yeah.
with it. So it's just a
It's just-
random survey of who self-selected in to do a survey. They would have been a member of Qualtrics panels. So there was
Okay.
no specific education they received from us.
So it's just the averages to see, okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I guess I'd say it's a hypothesis that the desire to know financial concepts, I think affects people, and the belief that they can know them, just from where they're from. So I wondered if you've done anything with that.
We haven't. We did include, not specific to desire, but we do have that subjective financial knowledge measure to kind of gauge some of that, where do they think they're at? But we don't have anything specific to what you mentioned, and I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, like whether, I mean, some people care more about money than other people. And, some of it may be from their background and some might just be because that's just who they are. So I've done that with sustainability. So I think it's the same kind of thing. Do you care about this? And it affects what you do because of how much you care about it. So anyway, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for this study. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And another question from Jeff. And were there differences in correct scores based on the different content areas? And I do remember that among Big 5 in the NFCS data set, the proportion of donor response in each 5 questions are different. And one of 5 has really high proportion of donor response that I cannot remember the exact content area. So I think, yeah, there should be, difference, but that we have not tested that issues yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
One other question.
And we have another one that I see in the chat. Do you have a way to measure financial resourcefulness? Not sure if that's the right term. For example, during the survey, can you monitor whether participants Google answers and see where they look up information, like a lockdown browser style? That's really interesting. Danielle, we did not do that. And I don't even know if there's a way to do that. Because if we did do a lockdown browser and then they use their
They may,
phone, it
yeah.
might not if they were on a computer, but that's a really interesting thought that if they are using outside sources, especially in the financial incentive group, you would think that'd be more appealing.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't even thought of that other than in my classroom when we might need a lockdown browser. But that's a really interesting idea. Mhm. Awesome.
Question, yeah, asking
Maybe
about
we're-
the resource.
Oh yeah, we could add a
Mhm.
question
Yeah.
at the end. That's a good idea, Madeline.
Good comments and questions.
Yeah, we really do appreciate all the questions and comments. I know KT mentioned this is still a work in progress, still finalizing things for manuscripts and moving things forward, but also to make sure we can figure out things that are meaningful for the field.
And as we mentioned earlier, this is well-developed topics and issue in educational testing and political literacy, but I'm still kind of new to this measurement issues for financial literacy and knowledge. So I was glad to discuss this topic with many audiences.
Are there any other questions?
And we're happy to answer questions if people reach out later.
Do we have any
I don't
information?
think we do.
Okay.
I don't think we put our email on
email
here, but
address? Mhm.
we're easily findable, and I know Jill and Lauren could point anybody to us as well.
Great. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I just wanted to say I dropped the survey, the post survey in the chat again, if people that are still on don't mind filling that out. I know it kind of got lost in the chat initially. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, KT and Melissa, for your work presenting this. It's always exciting to get works in progress out into the world before we've had the chance to fully submit it, and really excited for the audience engagement today. So thanks to everybody who attended. We look forward to continuing to elevate this research over the next couple of years as KT and Melissa explore related studies and work toward publication. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
you.